Today, we're diving into a story where betrayal shattered a family and set off a chain of events no one could have predicted. A marriage ended, a woman vanished, and a backyard hid a terrible secret. As investigators peeled back the layers, they uncovered not just a crime of passion, but a twisted conspiracy fueled by manipulation, fear, and a deadly lie that destroyed everything in its path. In early June 2023, Cedric Toiver was a familiar name throughout the quiet suburban neighborhoods of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. At 46 years old, Cedric had established himself as a respected figure in the community. As the owner of Toiver and Sons Renovations, he had remodeled dozens of homes in the area, building a reputation for reliability and high-quality work. Neighbors described him as reserved but polite, a man who took pride in his craft and rarely drew attention outside of professional circles. Cedric lived with his wife, Lionel Toiver, in a modest three-bedroom home on Oak Ridge Lane. Their marriage had lasted nearly 2 decades. Lionel, aged 43, was a third-grade teacher at East Highland Elementary School, known among parents and colleagues for her patience and warmth. To most outsiders, the Toivers' life appeared stable, even enviable. However, cracks had begun to form beneath the surface as early as the summer of 2022. Over the course of that year, Cedric became increasingly distant from Lionel. He began working longer hours and spending evenings away from home. Several local residents recalled seeing him at bars in downtown Baton Rouge, often in the company of Irina Price, a close friend of Lionel's. Irina, a vibrant 40-year-old woman who lived alone in a small condo off Florida Boulevard, had been a frequent guest at the Toivers' backyard cookouts and holiday gatherings. Before we continue, you are watching True Crime Excavate, your portal for gripping explorations into the world of real crime. Here, we dissect chilling cases, delve into unsolved mysteries, and recount tales of scandal and deception. Subscribe and become part of a community dedicated to unraveling mysteries and seeking justice. She had no spouse or children, and her outgoing personality had made her popular among Cedric and Lionel's extended circle of friends. Lionel had confided to her colleagues and relatives that she felt uneasy around Irina. She once told a coworker that she sensed Irina was always watching her, though she could never clearly explain what she meant. At the time, no one viewed it as more than typical tension between friends, no one imagined it would escalate beyond that. The situation changed drastically in early July 2023. On the afternoon of Saturday, July 1st, Cedric packed 2 duffel bags and left the marital home. According to the Cunninghams, the elderly couple who lived next door, Cedric appeared calm and deliberate. He loaded his bags into his white Ford F-150 truck, made a brief phone call from the driveway, and drove away. Later that evening, neighbors spotted Cedric at Irina Price's condo, located approximately 5 miles away on Cedarist Avenue. By Monday morning, July 3rd, Lionel's presence at school meetings had already been missed. When Principal Dana Holloway reached out by phone, she received no answer. Holloway later received a brief email from Lionel's personal account stating, "I'm taking personal leave." No further explanation was provided. Over the following days, Lionel's social media accounts, including Facebook and Instagram, were deleted without warning. Friends attempting to reach her by text or phone call received no response. When questioned by concerned neighbors and friends, Cedric stated that Lionel had traveled to Jacksonville, Florida, to stay with her sister, Cheryl Washington. He explained that she needed time to clear her head following the breakdown of their marriage. This story seemed plausible enough at the time, no one pressed Cedric for details. Yet, there were small inconsistencies. Cheryl Washington later confirmed to police that she had not seen or heard from Lionel during that time. In fact, Cheryl had not even been aware of the marital separation until law enforcement contacted her weeks later. Additionally, Lionel's vehicle, a gray 2018 Honda Civic, remained parked in the driveway at the Oak Ridge Lane property, untouched since the weekend Cedric moved out. Despite these warning signs, there was no immediate police involvement. Friends and co-workers, though concerned, assumed Lionel was dealing with emotional stress in private. July in Baton Rouge is characterized by intense heat and heavy humidity, and it was not unusual for residents to retreat indoors and limit social contact during this period. Meanwhile, the Toiver residence remained mostly dark. Only a single porch light was left on, and no movement was observed inside the house. Mail began piling up in the mailbox, but no one retrieved it. On July 10, Cedric made a post in a private community forum listing several household items for sale. He stated that he was downsizing and would be preparing the property for the market. Among the listed items were gardening tools, a washer and dryer set, and several pieces of patio furniture. This move was interpreted as a routine step following the breakdown of a marriage. On July 10, 2023, Cedric Toiver returned to the residence at 1429, Oak Ridge Lane, Baton Rouge. Contrary to any expectations of reconciliation, Cedric informed neighbors that he was beginning preparations to sell the property. He stated that the divorce process would be lengthy and complicated, but he wanted to move forward with liquidating shared assets. His explanation appeared consistent with the suddenness of the separation. Within 48 hours of his return, Cedric hired a crew of 5 laborers from his company, Toiver and Sons Renovations. Their task was to renovate the backyard, which had been overgrown after months of neglect. The project involved clearing the flower beds and tearing up sections of the existing stone patio. In its place, Cedric ordered the installation of a large hardwood terrace covering an area that stretched almost the full width of the house. Neighbors observed that Cedric supervised the project personally. He was seen arriving at the property early in the mornings and staying late into the evenings. On several occasions, Irina Price visited the site. She frequently brought coffee for Cedric and the crew, stayed for hours at a time, and appeared cheerful, often laughing and joking with the workers. Their interactions suggested a level of familiarity that exceeded professional or casual friendship. By July 20, the backyard had been almost completely cleared. The existing flower beds, which Lina Toiver had meticulously maintained during her time at the home, were dug up. Soil was overturned and disposed of off-site. Fresh wooden planks and support beams were delivered to the property for the construction of the new terrace. On July 24, at approximately 6 p.m., Mrs. Cunningham walked over to speak with Cedric about the late hours of construction. According to her later statement to police, as she approached the rear of the house, she detected a strong and unpleasant odor. Mrs. Cunningham described the smell as earthy, sour, and wrong. She initially thought it might be sewage leakage, but upon asking Cedric about it, he casually attributed it to rotting mulch used in landscaping. Unsatisfied, Mrs. Cunningham relayed her concerns to her husband, who then contacted the homeowners association. Over the following week, at least 3 other residents in the neighborhood submitted complaints about the smell. Cedric remained dismissive and continued construction as planned, increasing the crew's working hours to expedite completion before the property would be listed for sale. On the evening of July 28, Baton Rouge experienced a severe thunderstorm. Local weather reports indicated more than 4 inches of rain in a 6-hour period. Minor flooding was reported throughout the area, and standing water collected in low-lying yards, including portions of the Toiver property. The next morning, one of Cedric's construction workers, identified later as Luis Martinez, arrived to assess storm damage. He discovered that a section of the newly constructed terrace, approximately 6 feet by 8 feet, had collapsed. The soil beneath had become saturated, causing the supports to shift and break under the weight of the structure. As Martinez began clearing debris, he noticed a corner of black material protruding from the mud. Initially assuming it was construction waste, he attempted to pull it free. Upon uncovering more of the material, he recognized that it was a black tarp tied securely with twine. Further inspection revealed bed sheets wrapped tightly within the tarp. Martinez immediately stopped and contacted Cedric, who arrived minutes later. According to Martinez's sworn affidavit, Cedric instructed him to leave it and step away, appearing visibly agitated. Cedric then placed a phone call to an unknown party, pacing the yard while speaking in hushed tones. Martinez, feeling increasingly uncomfortable, left the site without further interaction. Upon unwrapping part of the tarp, investigators discovered human remains. The body was in an advanced stage of decomposition. The remains were bound tightly with twine, with the arms secured behind the back. A fractured skull was immediately noted, and no visible signs of blood or tissue were present on the surrounding soil, suggesting that the death had not occurred at the burial site. Items found within the wrapping included fragments of a leather purse, a set of house keys, and a partially intact driver's license belonging to Lyanna Toiver. Cedric Toiver was detained for questioning at the scene but was not immediately arrested. During preliminary interviews, Cedric maintained that he believed Lyanna was in Florida and had no knowledge of any remains on the property. He reiterated that the odor detected by neighbors had been caused by organic materials used for landscaping. Blood analysis of the surrounding soil came back negative. Combined with the relatively clean condition of the tarp's exterior, investigators concluded that Lyanna's death had occurred elsewhere and that her body had been transported to the burial site after her death. The preliminary autopsy report completed on July 31 estimated the time of death between July 5 and July 8, based on internal decomposition rates, external temperature conditions, and insect activity. During an interview conducted on the evening of July 29 at the Baton Rouge Police Department, Cedric Toiver maintained that he had not seen Lyanna since she had allegedly left for Jacksonville, Florida. In support of his statement, Cedric presented detectives with a screenshot from his mobile phone, a text message he claimed to have received from Lyanna on July 6 at 8:17 p.m., reading simply, "Don't call me. I'm gone." While at first glance, this message appeared to corroborate Cedric's version of events, investigators quickly grew skeptical. A preliminary linguistic analysis compared the July 6 message with historical texts sent by Lyanna Toiver. Over the prior 6 months, detectives observed notable differences in tone, punctuation, and phrasing. Lyanna had typically used full sentences, correct capitalization, and polite closings in her messages. In contrast, the July 6 text was abrupt, lacked capitalization, and contained uncharacteristic language. Further, investigators obtained records showing that Lyanna's phone remained near Cedarist Avenue until it went offline permanently in the early hours of July 7. At no point did her phone connect to any towers consistent with a route toward Florida. Attention quickly shifted to Irina Price. When first questioned, Irina claimed she had not seen Lyanna for several weeks prior to her disappearance. She described their relationship as casual and downplayed any recent communication. Irina also emphasized that she had been with Cedric during most evenings in early July, working on their personal relationship after his separation from Lyanna. However, a forensic examination of Irina's public social media profiles uncovered significant contradictions. On July 4, 2023, Irina posted a photo to her Instagram account showing 2 wine glasses on a patio table. Next to one of the glasses was a folded floral robe. Family members later identified the robe as one previously owned by Lyanna Toiver, visible in multiple family photographs and home videos. Investigators noted that Irina deleted this July 4 post on July 6, the same day Cedric claimed to have received the final text from Lyanna's phone. The timing was deemed highly suspicious. Based on these findings, detectives applied for and obtained a search warrant for Irina Price's condominium at 728 Cedarist Avenue. The warrant was executed on August 1, 2023. During the search, officers recovered several items of interest, including a discarded cell phone found behind the washing machine, multiple rolls of duct tape, a box of heavy-duty trash bags, and a half-used bottle of industrial-grade bleach. Forensic technicians later confirmed that the recovered cell phone was Lyanna Toiver's, stripped of its SIM card but otherwise intact. Deleted data retrieval revealed critical evidence, including a drafted but unsent message written around 11:30 p.m. on July 6, reading, "He told me he'd kill me if I told anyone." Additionally, handwriting samples collected from Irina's personal notebooks found in a bedroom drawer displayed notable similarities to the text found in Cedric's screenshot. Experts concluded that it was highly likely Irina had authored the July 6 message herself, using Lyanna's phone. At this stage of the investigation, detectives formulated a working theory. After Cedric moved out, Lyanna remained in the house until an unknown confrontation occurred between July 5 and July 6. Following this confrontation, Lyanna was killed, and her phone was used in an attempt to create a false trail indicating voluntary departure. The execution of the search warrant at 728 Cedarist Avenue on August 1 yielded several critical pieces of evidence. Among them was a cell phone found wedged behind the washing machine in the laundry area. The device, identified by its serial number as belonging to Lyanna Toever, had been stripped of its SIM card but was otherwise operational. Forensic technicians conducted an expedited analysis of the phone. Despite the deletion of most data, recovery tools retrieved several remnants from the device's internal storage. Notably, they uncovered a draft text message dated July 6 at 11:32 p.m. The message, never sent, read, "He told me he'd kill me if I told anyone." Investigators noted that the language was consistent with a person under duress, and the timestamp placed the draft within the critical window of Lyanna's final hours. In addition to the phone, detectives recovered a series of handwritten notes from a drawer in Irina Price's bedroom. A forensic handwriting expert compared the style of writing found in Irina's personal notepad to the message Cedric Toever had presented as having been sent by Lyanna. Analysis showed strong indications that both texts had been authored by the same hand, Irina's. This finding directly undermined Cedric's claim of receiving a legitimate message from his wife and suggested a coordinated attempt to fabricate her disappearance. Simultaneously, investigators continued gathering statements from neighborhood residents. On August 3, Mrs. Evelyn Cunningham voluntarily returned to the Baton Rouge Police Department to provide additional information. Mrs. Cunningham, who lived directly adjacent to the Toever residence, recounted observations she made during the early morning hours of July 7. According to Mrs. Cunningham's detailed statement, she had awoken at approximately 2:45 a.m. due to the sound of car doors slamming. Peering through her bedroom window, she observed a black Honda Civic, the same vehicle registered to Irina Price, parked across the street from the Toever home. Cedric's white Ford F-150 truck was already present in the driveway. Mrs. Cunningham noted that the Civic's headlights were off and no interior lights were visible. Approximately 10 minutes later, she saw figures moving between the vehicles and the backyard. Though visibility was limited, she described two individuals, presumed to be Cedric and Irina, carrying what appeared to be large, heavy black bags from the driveway toward the rear of the property. At the time, Mrs. Cunningham assumed they were disposing of construction debris related to the renovation work Cedric had recently undertaken. However, following the discovery of Lyanna's body, she realized the significance of what she had witnessed. Investigators cross-referenced Mrs. Cunningham's timeline with digital evidence collected from Cedric and Irina's mobile devices. Analysis of Cedric's phone revealed that it had been placed in airplane mode beginning at approximately 8 p.m. on July 6 and remained offline until July 8. This effectively disabled GPS tracking and call logs for that period. Further investigative work uncovered surveillance footage from a 24-hour convenience store located approximately 1.2 miles from the Toever residence. The footage, timestamped at 3:12 a.m. on July 7, showed Irina Price entering the store alone. In the video, Irina could be seen purchasing several items, including duct tape, a package of heavy-duty trash bags, and a bottle of industrial-strength bleach. Payment records confirmed the purchase was made using a credit card registered to Irina. The receipt, later recovered from the search of her condo, matched the transaction time and listed the same items visible on the footage. These findings were pivotal. They established that Irina had been active during the critical window of Lyanna's disappearance and had acquired materials often associated with the concealment of remains. The pattern of behavior was inconsistent with her stated alibi and aligned with premeditation. Detectives assembled a reconstructed timeline based on available evidence. July 5, late evening, last confirmed activity from Lyanna's phone near Oak Ridge Lane. July 6, evening, Cedric's phone was placed into airplane mode. July 6, late evening, Lyanna's phone moved toward Cedarist Avenue. July 7, 2:46 a.m., Irina's phone pings near the Toever residence. July 7, 3:12 a.m., Irina purchases cleaning and disposal supplies alone. July 7, early morning, witness observes Cedric and Irina moving heavy bags. Faced with mounting contradictions, both Cedric and Irina maintained their original narratives during subsequent interviews. Cedric continued to assert that he believed Lyanna had left of her own accord. Irina denied any involvement beyond casual assistance with Cedric's property renovations. The forensic processing of evidence collected from the Toiver residence and Irina Price's condominium advanced rapidly in the first weeks of August 2023. Analysts prioritized the examination of physical items linked to the concealment of Lyanna Toiver's body. However, the forensic team encountered challenges. Despite careful processing, no usable fingerprints were recovered from the duct tape, the tarp, or the twine. The construction materials and environmental conditions, particularly the flooding after the July 28 storm, had degraded potential forensic traces. One notable exception was found during the autopsy. Forensic examiners retrieved a partial DNA sample from underneath the fingernail of Lyanna's right hand. Analysis revealed that the DNA belonged to a female individual, but the sample did not match either Irina Price or Lyanna herself, nor did it match Cedric Toiver. Following court approval, a review of the therapist's notes revealed chilling details. In a session dated June 26, 2023, Lyanna expressed growing fear for her safety. According to the therapist's notes, Lyanna stated, "I believe Cedric and Irina are planning to hurt me." She further described Irina as manipulative, alleging that Irina had a history of untreated mental health issues and suggesting that Cedric was increasingly influenced by her. Lyanna's fears were recorded formally and had been discussed during her last session on July 3, just 3 days before her disappearance. However, at the time, Lyanna reportedly expressed uncertainty about whether to involve law enforcement, concerned about escalating the situation. Cross-referencing this list with criminal databases revealed an overlooked connection: Saria Knox, Irina's half-sister. Saria Knox, aged 34, had a criminal history that included 2 arrests for stalking and 1 for impersonation. Public records showed a strained relationship between the sisters, with periods of no contact interspersed with brief, tumultuous reconnections. Further investigation revealed that Saria had been in Baton Rouge during the time of Lyanna's disappearance. Surveillance footage from a traffic camera near Oak Ridge Lane, time-stamped at 11:56 p.m. on July 6, captured a black Honda Civic, the same vehicle registered to Irina, driving slowly past the Toiver residence. Enhancing the footage, analysts determined that the driver did not match Irina's physical description but appeared consistent with Saria Knox. Additional corroboration came from a neighbor's Ring security camera. Footage recorded around 2:30 a.m. on July 7 showed an individual unloading several large boxes from the trunk of the Honda Civic and carrying them toward Cedric's backyard. Although the lighting was poor, the individual's build and hairstyle were consistent with Saria Knox. Armed with this evidence, investigators requested a DNA sample from Saria Knox. A match was quickly confirmed. The partial DNA found under Lyanna Toiver's fingernail belonged to Saria. The findings fundamentally shifted the focus of the investigation. It was now evident that a third party had been physically involved in the handling of Lyanna's body, one who had not previously been on law enforcement's radar. By August 10, 2023, warrants were issued for the arrest of Saria Knox on charges of obstruction of justice and accessory after the fact to murder. Surveillance teams located her at an apartment complex on the east side of Baton Rouge, where she was taken into custody without incident. Under interrogation, Saria Knox admitted to her role in the aftermath of Lyanna's death, but she initially minimized her involvement, claiming she had only helped because Irina said it was urgent. Further questioning would reveal the deeper extent of her complicity. On the morning of August 10, 2023, the Baton Rouge Police Department executed an arrest warrant for Saria Knox. She was taken into custody without resistance at the Riverstone Apartments located on the eastern side of the city. The charges filed against her included obstruction of justice and accessory after the fact to murder in connection with the death of Lyanna Toiver. During initial interrogation at the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison, Saria Knox was hesitant and guarded. However, after several hours of questioning, she agreed to make a recorded statement. According to investigators, Saria admitted her role, stating, "I did what Irina told me to do." She said Lyanna was threatening to ruin everything. Saria claimed that Irina had portrayed the situation as urgent and dangerous, insisting that Lyanna was unstable and suicidal. Saria further alleged that Irina manipulated Cedric Toiver into believing that Lyanna posed a threat not only to herself but also to Cedric's career and public image. According to Saria's account, Irina presented the plan as a necessary action to protect Cedric and secure their future. She claimed she was brought in specifically to assist after a confrontation had already escalated beyond control. Hours after Saria's confession, Cedric Toiver was arrested at a construction site where he had been supervising a small roofing project. He was taken into custody without incident and transported for formal booking. Cedric faced charges of manslaughter, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit murder. During subsequent interviews, Cedric consistently denied any physical involvement in Lyanna's death. His defense maintained that Cedric had been emotionally manipulated by Irina Price. They argued that Cedric, overwhelmed by guilt and confusion, had participated in the concealment of Lyanna's body but had never inflicted harm upon her directly. Irina Price was arrested later the same day at her residence on Cedarist Avenue. Unlike Cedric and Saria, Irina remained composed throughout the arrest and booking process. In interviews, she was cold and methodical, consistently denying any involvement in Lyanna Toiver's death. Irina claimed that Saria had acted entirely on her own without any encouragement or prior discussion. The trial of Cedric Toiver, Irina Price, and Saria Knox commenced in early December 2023 at the 19th Judicial District Court of East Baton Rouge Parish. The prosecution presented a case built on digital evidence, forensic findings, and witness testimony. Central to the state's argument was the demonstration of a deliberate effort by Irina and Cedric to mislead authorities and conceal Lyanna Toiver's death. Saria Knox entered a plea agreement with prosecutors in exchange for her full cooperation. She testified in open court detailing how Irina convinced her to participate and describing the events leading to the disposal of Lyanna's body. According to Saria, the fatal blow had been unintentional during an altercation in which Lyanna resisted attempts to force her into silence. Nevertheless, the consequences were irreversible. Irina's defense, by contrast, sought to place sole blame on Saria, asserting that any actions taken by Irina were after the fact and based on misinformation provided by her half-sister. They argued that Irina had no intention of harming Lyanna and had merely been drawn into a chaotic situation. The jury was not persuaded by the defense strategies. On January 17, 2024, after less than 2 days of deliberations, the jury returned verdicts in the case. Cedric Toiver was found guilty of manslaughter and obstruction of justice. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, with no possibility of early release for the first 15 years. Irina Price was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and obstruction of justice, receiving a sentence of 30 years, with eligibility for parole after 25 years. Saria Knox, having cooperated with prosecutors and accepted responsibility, was sentenced to 12 years for accessory after the fact and obstruction of justice. The court acknowledged that Cedric had not been the individual who physically struck the fatal blow. Forensic and testimonial evidence confirmed that it was Saria Knox who had killed Lyanna Toiver during a confrontation inside the Toiver home on the night of July 6, 2023. However, Cedric's role in the subsequent cover-up and his failure to seek help or report the death was considered significant and criminally culpable. To this day, Cedric Toiver maintains that he never witnessed the moment of Lyanna's death. He claims that when he arrived at the scene, the decision to conceal her death had already been made and that he acted out of fear and confusion.